Hi guys, it's Miss Montgomery here. I felt really bad that I couldn't be with you the day before your test and to take a look at that last practice for annotation. So I thought I'd put together a little video to kind of walk you through an example I did of annotations for the story of an hour. So if you could please take out your annotations and have those out with you as we're going through this, and also something to write with, because I'd love for you to take notes on things that I mentioned here and also add to your annotations on your paper. Okay, so hopefully you have taken those out and you're ready to go. One thing you'll notice on this image here is that you see different colors of ink. One thing I did is I went through and I read the story, and then when I got to the end, after I had a better understanding of how it ended up, I could go back and I could find some of those things that were the foreshadowing that I asked you to look for. I could find some of that symbolism because I had a better understanding of what the story was all about. And I could also kind of pick out the irony a little bit better. So you're going to see some different colors of ink. That red is when I went back into the story and picked things out. You'll also notice up here where I have this box that says vocab to know, and it's small, but it says and look up. So anytime you see a word that's boxed, that's me reminding myself, like, hey, maybe that's some vocab and context that I need to use those context clues to figure out, or if I can't use those, if that doesn't give me enough context, I'd have to look those up. So one thing you notice is that anytime I have marked text, I have also included some marginal annotations on the side. So let's just work through some of this. So one thing I wrote here is tells us she has heart trouble in first line, must be important. Now, the reason I'm saying is that if they start off a story with something like that, they want me to take notice. Now, I know after getting to the end of the story, that's actually foreshadowing, right? Now that we've read it and we know how it ends, we know that that was kind of a very subtle, sneaky hint that our author gave us that something was going to happen to her heart, which is what happened in the end, right? And then I just have some questions here like, ooh, how is she going to react to the news of her husband's death? Moving down, I have underlined some more information here to kind of just pull out what I think is important. Now, I know I've heard a lot, or I've read in your self-reflections, that one thing you guys are really unsure of, that you lack some confidence in, is knowing what's important. My advice to you is that if there is any inkling that something might be important, go ahead and underline it and jot down some sort of annotation. I know it's time consuming, but what can also be helpful is if you read through the passage and then you go back and add annotations. Because after you have that deeper understanding of the story, you have a better understanding of what is important. That's hard to do in the first run through. When we get into our novel, to help with that, because we don't have infinite amounts of time to read and reread a novel, I'll help give you some things to guide you. I'll give you a lens to read through that will help you pick out certain things. But for a short story like this, you can easily read through it, then go back and do annotations to pick out what's important. Okay, so moving on, I've just noted some things about like the character. I've noticed that she's not like other women, and I've underlined what I would use for evidence. So like if the teacher asked me, hey, describe Mrs. Mallard, I could say, well, she's not like other women. And then I could go right into this passage and I could say, and this is how I know that. And that's what's important. That's what I've tried to point out to you guys, is that it's not enough just to make a claim. You should be able to back up what you're going to say. And that's basically what I'm doing here. Here's my claim. Here's my evidence. Moving on, imagery is something that we've been talking about. It's one of our lit terms. So I really liked how the author set up some imagery here, and I could really kind of picture that whole scene in my mind as she went through. And now if you have a good understanding of literature, you know that when the author includes seasons like this, it oftentimes means something. They're not just commenting on the weather. So you might be able to pick this out before finishing through the story and having a deeper understanding. But this idea here of spring, that is a good symbol for new life, right? That's when things are born. Like think of little Easter bunnies and like little chicks and flowers blooming. That's spring is oftentimes equated with new life. So that's something that I know is a symbol. This next piece here, I might not have gotten until I got through the story, but kind of in hindsight, I was able to figure out that these patches of blue sky with the clouds, that blue sky represents that future that she's looking forward to. It's kind of like that light at the end of the tunnel kind of thing. And then moving on, here we just have some characterization. We get some description of her. Here, I pulled the passage out and I kind of made an inference, right? This is what I think that means. I made some inferences over here about some internal conflict. Here, identify what I think is the conflict. Now, personification was not a word that we have gone over yet, but I know it, so I identified it here. Here we also have an inference. Remember, this was something I told you I wanted you guys to work on, is giving more explanation and including some inferences here. Okay, second page. I've included some questions as I'm reading through, like, so the question, they introduced the story by saying she had heart trouble, but then I start reading through this and I see her reaction to the news of her husband's death and the realization that she can finally be a free woman. I asked, does she really have heart trouble, or was this just, was she just always tense because she was unhappy, right? Some more characterization of the husband here. It's not that she was unhappy in marriage because he was a bad man or an abusive man. He was actually a good man. She just didn't want to be trapped, right? Some more inference here. Here's a connection, right? I made a connection to current events, or like what I perceive to be the position of women still today. So I connected this whole paragraph here to what I feel women are still enduring. Irony. I picked out the irony. That was something I told you guys specifically to be looking for. This is a little more obvious, right? We don't need to know the ending. Is the irony is that her sister thinks that she is just torn up about the death, but she's actually very emotional because she's just so excited to be free. Again, the symbol coming back, again, knowing just this mention of this window. They mentioned it earlier as well. Those two mentions in such a short story kind of says to me, like, hey, there's something here. So I feel like that's a symbol that represents like that opening to a new life. Let's see, we just have some more inference here. She has something to look forward to, a bit more characterization and imagery with our character. Here, just something that stood out to me, like, well, hold on, here's a little twist, right? She's acting this way because she feels like her husband is dead, but then someone was opening the front door with a latchkey. It was Brentley Mallard, like, wait a minute, he's not dead, exclamation points. And then here, Richard's quick motion to screen him. So he's trying to save Mrs. Mallard because everybody thinks she has this heart affliction and doesn't want that shock to get to her. Let's see, but it was too late. Now this ending here is like the real thing that like hits home with us, right? When the doctors came, they said she had died of heart disease. Everybody knew she had these heart troubles, dash, of joy that kills. So we know, because we were able to get into the mind of Mrs. Mallard, that the irony is that she did not die of happiness that her husband was actually alive. She actually died because he had killed that hope, and therefore it had killed her. So the irony is that it was not joy that killed her. It was actually like despair, giving up, like, hey, I have nothing to live for, that killed her. Now, I included this piece down here just to give you a little background information about the story, and I circled the year because I think the context of when it was written can impact our understanding of a story. So knowing that it was written in 1884 when the plight of women was a little bit different than it is today kind of gives me some more insight about how she would be feeling and why she would be feeling this. And I had mentioned, I'd asked, can't remember where it was, I asked the question, right here. Why marry him if she didn't love him? Well, knowing that this was written in 1884, knowing that marriage was one of the very few options that a woman had to have a future, now I understand better. So that kind of sums it up. Some things that you could definitely put in here is like you could identify the point of view in here, and you could get into more of the conflict. So you might have more and different and varied annotations, but this at least gives you a good example of how things were marked and then explained as well. And this is what I'm looking for from you all. I think you guys have a great foundation, and that it's just a few little tweaks here and there, and that your annotations will be looking great. And I look forward to reading them when you have your test tomorrow. If you have any questions, you can try to shoot me an email. I'll be back in the afternoon, so if you want to stop by my desk, if you do have any questions, I'll be happy to help you out. If not, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye, guys.